I'd like to tell you the story about my mission in Kenya and how it came about. Today in Kenya, I have a team that generally refers to me as president. It started with a small step of taking two young boys to kindergarten. They had nobody to pay their school fees, and it was $50 each to get them to school, and another $50 to pay for their uniform and some school supplies and put some shoes on their feet. Yeah, that was 2005, but by 2010, I had held my first board meeting. One of my best friends was a board member. There was a friend of my brother's from high school that I went to for some advice, and he joined the board. And I found that people were coming to me that I needed to help me get started. Around the same time, a woman that I used to babysit for found me in the neighborhood and said to me, "I hear that you've got a project going in Kenya, and I'm looking to do some volunteering, and I'd love to help you out." And I thought to myself, I don't even know what I'm doing. Why do I need a volunteer? And I went away a little puzzled from that encounter. But by the time we had our first board meeting, it became clear that I would need some more help. I was going to be doing fundraising. I was going to be heading back to Kenya, keeping projects going. And I would need somebody to help me with the banking, with doing receipts, keeping track of the activities in Canada. And so I did return to that past babysitting client and asked her to assist. And she became our first volunteer office assistant for 9 good years. A couple of years later, a good friend of mine who I was on parish council with contacted me, and she'd also heard of the work we were doing now in Kenya. And she invited me for breakfast, and during that breakfast told me that she had this really strong sense that God was pushing her to get involved and to support me. And she made a very generous donation, but in that conversation, she also told me that she was volunteering or finishing up some volunteering where she had been the treasurer, and she was going to miss that work. She enjoyed working with the financial side of things. And the next day, I thought about that conversation and realized, hey, I need a treasurer. I'm building up a board too. So I called my friend back and said to her, I think that God's pushing you. He had a bigger plan, not just the very kind donation, but I need help with the finances. We need a treasurer. And she happily accepted and is still with us today. And things started moving. Things just started moving in leaps and bounds. And I continued to feel like I was just running to catch up with the development of Elimu is the name of the charity. But in 2019, we hit a rough patch. It was a tough year. After getting up to 4 projects running, education projects, the children's home, the school sponsorship project, our sewing project, and Upendo Nursery School, which we had built for a local village, things were kind of getting stuck. One of our donors stepped back, reduced their funding. Other things that I was hoping for didn't come through. And we had to start cutting back. And I started having a feeling like things were going to not work out and that things were going to kind of come crashing down around my head. So it was a year of a lot of anxiety, a little bit of fear of the future. And again, that kind of unworthiness. Who are you, Nina, to be running an international charity, to be helping children to achieve better futures? Are you sure you can do this? And I wasn't sure. But I came to realize that what was happening to me was that God was training me to trust in Him. And eventually, I began to learn to accept that if what He wanted was to take this all away from me, then that would be okay, because He would have something better in store for me. It took me some time to get to that, but I eventually did. And I said, yes, Lord, if you need to take this away from me, if you've got a different plan, then go ahead and do that. But please give me the strength to get through whatever it is that you have in store. So during that year, I was at one point leading the prayer meetings with our staff. We do that on a monthly basis. And I selected a reading from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5, verse 1 to 11, in which Jesus comes and he finds Peter on the edge of the sea with his boat, and he tells Peter to get back in his boat and to go out into the deep for a catch of fish. And Peter says, "But Lord, we fished all night, we caught nothing. But if you say so, I'll do it." And of course, Peter gets in his boat, Jesus gets in Peter's boat, and off they go. And Peter hauls in a massive load of fish till the boat almost sinks. So we meditated on that reading, on that passage as a team. And I encouraged us to sort of really look at what is it that's holding us at the edge of the shore? What is it that's keeping us from launching out into the deep? And we each sort of looked deeply into ourselves, and through that process, we committed ourselves to going out into the deep, letting Jesus in our boat and accepting to go through the fear and just go off into that future that we couldn't really see what that was about. For me, that was something to do with addressing this sense of unworthiness that I was suffering from, and kind of claiming my role as a leader, claiming my leadership within all that God was working out in my life. At that time, too, we hit 2020 and the pandemic arrived. And of course, it now looked like things were going to get even worse. But, they didn't. Things began to get better, even despite all that was going on globally. People stepped up to the plate to help out in new ways. We found amazing new projects to get involved with that replaced the things we had to stop doing during lockdown. I got stuck in Kenya for a whole year, and that really allowed me to have some amazing quality time with the children of our home and with my staff. And I had been having the sense that it was time to get back to Canada, that I needed to come back and focus on things over here. And this really allowed me to prepare. God was preparing the ground for that transition. I didn't see it at the time, but I've come to see it since. So came back to Canada in December 2020 and settled in pretty quickly. Felt a sense of peace. And despite the lockdowns and all that was going on, new people were coming into my life. I was making new connections, 2 wonderful new people on our board of directors. New funding partnerships were coming into place, and new friends. And for the first time, I was actually having friends in my life that had a strong Catholic faith, which is something I've never really had before. And by the end of 2021, I still wasn't able to get back to Kenya. And I came to realize in that sort of transition to the new year that what God had been doing with me, the time I was afraid that he was tearing things apart and taking things away from me, he'd actually just been preparing me emotionally, mentally, for this new transition in my life, to come back to Canada, to focus on the work that needs to be done here, building up my board of directors, focusing on the fundraising, and allowing my team in Kenya to take on the role of managing the projects there. And so I was ready for that without even really realizing that I was going through that process of preparation. In that time, too, I realized that God was allowing me to fulfill a promise that I had made to myself and to my mom. For some time, I had been praying that when the time came, I could be here in Canada with my mom, who's on her own now after my dad's passing away some years ago. And this transition has allowed that to take place as well. So I learned that lesson. God was not crashing things down around my ears. He was just preparing me for a change. And again, it was a gentle loving preparation that I didn't really notice at the time. And now looking back, I've come to really fully understand it and to be really grateful for it. And he was guiding me in a new role, this role of leadership, leading this organization and doing it from Canada, and helping me to overcome that sense of unworthiness that does still plague me from time to time. But I know with God at my side, it doesn't really matter if I'm worthy or not worthy. He's there and he's guiding me in this role as a leader, and he'll make the things happen that need to happen. So I can accept myself as a leader with a story to tell, an important experience to share that I enjoy sharing now, and a sense that I have guidance and advice to offer, and not just to children and youth, but also to my peers. So I'd like to tell anybody who's listening to me now that sometimes you may get to a point in your life where you feel like the ground under you is shaking, and you're not on solid ground. Things feel like they're crumbling around you. You're unsure and you can't get your footing. You don't see clearly ahead of you the road. So ask yourself, is God within that? Where is he? Have you given all of that over to Jesus and let him take control instead of being the one that's controlling everything? Then just allow him. Allow him to take control. Stop trying too hard. Stop trying to be the one in control, because that's actually usually not possible. And when you're on shaky ground, not feeling fulfilled, feeling fearful and unworthy, maybe it's just God creating something new in you, around you, through you, and something better for you. I don't really know where things are headed. In my life right now, the possibilities seem endless and huge. And some days that's exciting and wonderful, and some days that's scary. But I look back at the amazing adventure that I have been on, with running this charity, with spending so much time in Kenya, meeting amazing people, and the transition that I'm involved in right now. And I know that Jesus is still in my boat, and he's still the one that's directing me to that great catch of fish. And my job is just to keep paddling and keep my eyes on the horizon. And even though I don't really know what's coming next, I just stay hopeful, joyful, and grateful, anticipating that he's got the best in store for me.